I was halfway through presenting the quarterly logistics overhaul timeline charts glowing behind me, hands steady over the clicker, when the conference room door opened without a knock. Braxton Vale. He didn't belong there. This was a closed meeting for the ops team. But he strolled in anyway, latte-colored suit tailored within an inch of its life, and that smirk, the one that looked carved, not born, already twitching at the corner of his mouth. He didn't sit. He leaned against the whiteboard, the one I'd been using to map out freight pivots, and crossed his arms like he was about to critique a middle school book report. Then, with a long sip from some green-tinted smoothie and a voice soaked in boredom, he said, "Why are we still carrying dead weight? That was it. 1 line, 7 words. It hit like a power cut. No immediate noise, just the sudden vacuum after everything goes dark. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I could feel the way the room shifted. Chairs stiffened. Breaths held. I saw it in the pause of pixels on the screen, in the tremor on the face of Jonah, my junior planner, who looked like he'd just swallowed a stapler. No one laughed. No one spoke. And Braxton, he just smiled wider and left. I didn't finish the slide deck. I closed the laptop, nodded to the room like it was any other day, and walked out. In the restroom, I locked the farthest stall, sat on the closed toilet lid, and finally exhaled. My silk blouse stuck to the sweat behind my neck. My heels pulsed against tile. I stared at the grout between the black tiles, counted the cracks, 12. Same as my years since the last merger. Same as the nights I slept under my desk when we rerouted the Pacific Corridor through Denver. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. He didn't know what I'd built. He didn't care. And I realized he wasn't trying to insult me. He was trying to erase me. I stood, adjusted my collar in the mirror, and walked back out without looking down. When I got to my desk, there was already a note on my monitor. At exactly 4:00 p.m., I stepped into the glass conference room with the same posture I'd used to address boardrooms for over a decade, upright, steady, unblinking. Braxton was already there, flanked by 2 HR reps in matching navy blazers, both pretending they hadn't been whispering before I walked in. He smiled at me like we were college friends catching up over overpriced wine. "A lira," he said, dragging out the vowels like he owned them. "You've been an asset, a solid archive of institutional memory." I sat without speaking. My hands were calm in my lap. "We're pivoting to a leaner model," he continued, as if reading off a napkin he'd scribbled in the elevator. "More agile, future-focused. Think of this as an opportunity for reinvention." One of the HR women slid a folder toward me. Thick, glossy, polite, the kind of folder that says, "You're gone, but we'd like to pretend this was mutual." I opened it. 6 months of base pay, bonuses untouched, stock vesting accelerated, legal reviewed. Clean, almost generous. He wanted me out quiet. He wanted me out grateful. I looked up just long enough to catch the glint of self-congratulation in his eyes. "I want you to land on your feet," he added, as if he'd tossed me a lifeline instead of pushing me off the ship. I signed. Not for him, for me. For the plan I'd kept sealed away for nearly a year. I rose, shook his hand like it meant nothing, and walked out of the building without once looking back. That night I poured a glass of red, older than Braxton's resume, and went to the safe in my hallway closet. I spun the lock with practiced fingers, pulled open the steel door, and took out a beige folder thick with quiet preparation. Plan M labeled in black marker. Inside a napkin with a signature, an unsigned NDA. A printed memo detailing freight dependencies. At the center, Marwick and Thorne Logistics. I took one breath, then pulled out my laptop, opened a spreadsheet titled Exit Velocity, and double-checked the routing figures for 3 commercial zones. 6 months before the smoothie and the smirk, I sat across from Arvo Marwick in a Houston steakhouse that smelled like mahogany and regret. He looked exactly like a man being divorced for the second time, tie-loose collar stained with bourbon. Sweat eyes rimmed red, but still calculating behind the fog of it all. We'd met under the pretense of discussing a delayed cargo manifest. What we actually discussed was freedom. Marwick and Thorne wasn't just another supplier, it was the invisible artery that kept half of Vale Integrated's products moving. Arvo had built it from scratch in the late 80s, but he was tired, cornered by attorneys and a soon-to-be ex-wife who wanted blood and brand equity. He needed a clean exit. one that wouldn't be clawed apart in family court. I offered him one. I don't want it now, I told him, slicing into my steak without ceremony. But if I ask, you'll let me buy the controlling steak. Silent, swift, no noise. He stared at me for a long time, chewing on the inside of his cheek like it owed him something. Then, with a grunt, he tore a piece of paper from the corner of a children's menu and wrote in quick, jagged pen strokes, 51% agreed if terms met. No outside notice. A. Marwick. I slid it into my purse without another word. We didn't shake on it. We didn't need to. Back in the present, I pulled that napkin from the folder and laid it flat on my desk. The ink had bled slightly, but the signature was still sharp. The moment Braxton opened his mouth in that conference room, the countdown had started. I didn't need rage. I needed leverage. He'd given me both. I clicked open the encrypted folder labeled Phase 1 and began cross-referencing timelines with Arvo's last email. The divorce was nearly finalized. His wife had moved to Miami. The shares were clean. By noon tomorrow, I'd have the wire instructions sent. By Friday, the board of Marwick and Thorne would receive an internal memo marked confidential. The transfer was made in 3 precise movements. First, the severance package, Braxton's parting gift sliced and rerouted through a Wyoming LLC. Second, a crypto wallet I hadn't touched since 2014, which had aged far better than most things I owned, converted to fiat in just under 6 hours. Third, the trust my mother had left me, marked emergency, only which I'd always assumed would stay untouched. But this was blood in the water, and my mother would have understood. By morning, the funds were dispersed across 3 shell accounts and funneled into Marwick and Thorne Holdings with 0 red flags. Alira Morvan, former director of supply operations, became the majority shareholder with 51% control. No champagne, no boardroom applause, just a flicker of confirmation on a secure login screen and a text from Arvo. She's yours now. Don't let her rot. I was installed as interim chair before noon. By 2:00 p.m., I issued my first executive directive. Subject line, service realignment, notice effective immediately. 18% rate increase across Tier A freight clients. A congestion-based pause applied to all expedited schedules routed through central distribution hubs. Temporary performance buffers enacted for select corporate accounts, including one flagged VV0402. Vail integrated. I drafted the language myself. Neutral clinical, wrapped in logistics speak that masked the scalpel beneath it. No mention of revenge. No names. Just subtle constraint, plausible explanation, and a ripple that would deepen into a current by morning. I watched the delivery logs update in real time. Container delays, routing lags, unexpected volume spikes. Nothing catastrophic. Just enough to jam the gears to throw procurement into a scramble and customer success into overtime. Everything moved, just slower, just enough to make them sweat. And Braxton, somewhere in his glass-walled corner office, hadn't even realized yet that his pipelines were mine. I muted the alert system and sat back, fingers laced, as the last confirmation email landed in my inbox. At the bottom of the message was a timestamp and the name of the executive recipient. I smiled when I saw it. The first signs were subtle calls from warehousing flagged as unexpected delivery lags, then follow-up emails from key accounts requesting escalation contacts. By mid-morning, I knew the freight disruption had hit critical. Vail Integrated's internal systems were panicking exactly as I expected them to. The routing algorithm we'd built under my tenure couldn't handle unpredictability. It relied on my old frameworks ones I now quietly rewrote from the outside. Contracts weren't being fulfilled. Deliveries skipped preferred lanes. Procurement sent out urgent queries to vendors. Braxton did what he always did, react too late, then pretend it was proactive leadership. He called for an emergency logistics summit. I arrived 15 minutes early, signed in as Chairwoman Marwick and Thorne, and took the seat at the head of the long walnut table. Tailored navy jacket, minimal makeup, black notebook, open to a fresh page. People began filing in procurement leads, operations managers, compliance observers. Some nodded at me, unsure if they should speak. 1 or 2 looked like they'd seen a ghost. Braxton walked in 5 minutes late. He stopped mid-stride when he saw me. His expression flickered confusion, then recognition, then something raw and sour beneath it. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I simply lifted my coffee cup and gave a polite nod like I'd just spotted an old acquaintance at a hotel bar. He sat down slowly, scanning the room like it had turned hostile in his absence. I believe I said, setting my cup down, "We have some rate revisions to discuss." He blinked, then glanced at the printed agenda in front of him. My company's logo was watermarked across every page. Marwick and Thorn Logistics. My company. I watched as he processed it, watched as the threads tightened behind his eyes. He didn't speak. Not yet. He knew better than to make a scene here. I opened the folder in front of me and slid a copy across the table toward him. Freight adjustments, compliance clauses, updated service caps, each word as sharp as a scalpel. He looked at it, but didn't reach. I let the silence stretch, measured and loaded as my phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. The text came just after midnight. No name, no emojis, just a line of clean instruction. Dinner Tuesday, Belgrave Room, come alone. I didn't need the number saved to know who sent it. Dagna Vale. She hadn't been seen in public since the day the board forced her out in a merger she designed and her brother claimed. She'd once built the marketing engine behind Vale Integrated, and then quietly was erased from its history. Rumors said she was paid in cash real estate in silence, but her fingerprints still lingered in the brand voice, the partner language, the architecture of their influence. Tuesday night, I arrived early. She was already there, sipping something red and ruinously expensive in a glass that caught the chandelier light like fire. Her hair was pulled back into a smooth twist, silver streaks worn like war medals. She didn't greet me with warmth, just a tilt of her head and a motion toward the seat across from her. "You beat him," she said without preamble. I didn't respond. I waited. He was trying to buy Marwick through proxies. Dummy LLCs, a sham advisory group. I intercepted it 2 weeks before you closed. She sipped again, then added, "He doesn't know you blocked him. He thinks he lost to delays. He doesn't know it was you." The napkin deal. I'd made it just in time. "I want in," she said, sliding a manila envelope toward me. Inside, 5% stake transfer forms. Silent, non-voting, but with access to internal strategy briefings. You front the moves. I feed you what he's doing before he does it. I kept my hands on my lap. Why? Because I hate watching amateurs play with empires, and because I'm tired of watching men inherit what women built. I said nothing. I didn't trust her, but I didn't have to, not yet. She leaned in slightly. "You can keep it small, or we can dismantle him completely." I took the envelope and placed it in my bag without opening it. On the way home, I didn't play music. I drove in silence, my fingers twitching once as I passed through the security gate to my building. I started with the quiet ones, the clients who never made waves, who signed renewals without fuss, who just wanted their shipments to arrive on time and without drama. They were loyal to Vale Integrated out of habit, not affection. I met them over coffee, not boardroom presentations. I came with numbers, not pitches. 15% below their current rates, guaranteed load prioritization, no surcharge volatility for 18 months. And one more thing, discretion. Every client that signed got a clause built on silence. Their contracts would be clean, private, and untraceable back to me for now. Most didn't even blink. They'd felt the shake inside Vale. They'd seen the backlogs. And now they had a safer alternative mine. By the end of the week, 5 accounts shifted quietly into Marwick's lanes. 2 more sent emails requesting benchmark comparisons. Then came the leak. Subject: urgent freight losses unexplained. It wasn't addressed to me, but someone on the inside forwarded it. Braxton's procurement team was in free fall. Route delays, invoice discrepancies, contractual lapses all suddenly clustered and growing. He hadn't traced it back to Marwick yet, but he knew something was slipping beneath him. Then came the whispers. A junior logistics manager posted on LinkedIn about leadership changes in third-party coordination. Someone else commented with a wide-eyed emoji and a line about ghosts running the freight lanes. And then quietly, predictably, the board started asking questions. I heard through Dagna that Robert Vale had scheduled 2 unscheduled meetings in 48 hours. That's how I knew the panic wasn't contained to Braxton's corner office anymore. The next morning, I walked into Marwick HQ and found a message waiting on my desk. No name. Just a manila folder thick with client feedback and raw shipping metrics from Vail's accounts metrics someone clearly didn't want me to have. I flipped through the pages, red flags everywhere. Then I saw the sender's initials scrawled faintly at the bottom of the last page, a name I hadn't seen in 3 years. And that's when I picked up the phone and made the call I'd been holding off on. The first article dropped on a Thursday morning sandwiched between an earnings report and an ad for ergonomic desk chairs. The headline called me a disgruntled former exec turned saboteur. The body quoted an anonymous insider claiming I'd been emotionally unstable, erratic, and obsessed with taking down the company that rejected her. It was Braxton's move. Predictable, lazy. A PR fire started with damp matches. By Friday, 2 more articles appeared. One included a stock photo of me from a logistics panel 3 years ago. Bad lighting, closed expression, the perfect portrait of corporate vengeance. Comments trickled in. A few trolls, a few allies, but most damaging of all were the quiet nods from people who didn't know me and didn't care to. I responded that Sunday. The release was clean published through Marwick's media desk. It included recent on-time performance reports, updated client satisfaction metrics, and most damning public procurement logs showing Vail's freight delays and a still pending audit with regulatory flags. I didn't name Braxton. I didn't need to. The board called an emergency session. I arrived 15 minutes early. Elora Grant arrived at exactly 10 o'clock heels like metronomes, and a leather case under her arm. Braxton strolled in last, casual, confident, the kind of grin that only forms when someone mistakes noise for power. He started with a laugh. "I'm glad we're all finally here to clear the air." Elora didn't respond. She simply opened her case and passed out slim matte black folders, one for each board member. Inside, a full timeline. Dates, names, screenshots, wire instructions linked to shell companies. Email chains between Braxton and third-party brokers attempting to purchase Marwick under Vail's nose. And near the back, a procurement approval form bearing Braxton's signature, backdated, notarized, and easily provable as forged. The air changed. Robert Vail adjusted his glasses. A woman from compliance whispered something to her neighbor. Braxton's mouth opened, then closed again. I didn't speak. Elora did. "Mr. Vail," she said evenly, "you attempted to defraud your own board." Braxton went pale. He reached for a rebuttal. It didn't come. I watched the silence settle like dust. The silence stretched long enough to become unbearable. No one reached for coffee. No one shuffled a paper. Even the air conditioning seemed to hesitate. Robert Vail finally leaned forward, took off his glasses, and looked at his son, like he was someone else entirely. "Braxton," he said softly. "Step outside." Braxton didn't move at first. His mouth opened as if to protest, but the words never formed. Something in his father's voice had already dismissed him. He left the room without slamming the door, but the tension he left behind stayed with us like smoke. Robert turned to me, face calm but bloodless. "What would it take," he said, "to make this go away?" I didn't hesitate. "A full public severance of all Vail ties to Marwick and Thorne," I said evenly. "No shadow contracts, no backdoor agreements, and Braxton's resignation. On paper, effective immediately." He blinked once, then nodded. "You're not leaving me much room." "No," I said, "but I am leaving you a company." The meeting adjourned with no more words. Elora gathered her folders. I walked out with my spine straight and my pulse silent. We didn't shake hands. 36 hours later, the statement hit the wires. Braxton Vail has stepped down from his role at Vail Integrated to pursue new opportunities. The board thanks him for his service during a critical period of transformation. The language was sanitized, corporate, carefully dipped in diplomacy. But inside the office, people saw the truth. He was escorted out by 2 security staff, Bluetooth headset, still flashing, still muttering threats into a deadline. Someone said he tried to throw a paperweight. Someone else said he cried. I didn't watch it happen. I didn't need to. I was at Marwick's downtown office finalizing new routing corridors and reviewing 6 new contracts that had arrived overnight. One of them was signed by a client who hadn't returned my calls in 4 years. I initialed the last page and reached for my coffee. It had gone cold. 3 weeks passed in a blur of signatures, onboarding calls, and contract rewrites. Freight volumes doubled. Clients who once ignored my calls were suddenly trying to schedule dinners. I poached Vale's former logistics director. He quit with a smile and brought his entire team with him. And then Dagna vanished. No texts, no burner number, no encrypted emails. Her office line redirected to a disconnected tone. Her stake transfer came by courier, 12% of Marwick and Thorne signed, and notarized, no conditions, no request for a seat at the table. Just a note in slanted ink, don't become me. I stared at it for a long time before sliding it into a drawer I never used. With her exit, I now held 63%. No partners, no backers. Just me and a company rebuilt on ash and blueprint. I called a full executive meeting. The boardroom was quiet when I entered, no introductions needed. They all knew who I was now, not by scandal, but by structure. Not by noise, but by results. I opened the quarterly report, turned the pages slowly. Performance up, contract renewal rate up, staff turnover down, clients stabilizing, numbers clean. I closed the folder and looked around the table. The room didn't feel like victory. It felt like weight. I'm not here to play queen, I said, voice steady. I'm here to build something no man, no sun, no ghost can burn again. No one clapped. That wasn't the kind of room this was. But heads nodded, quiet and certain. After the meeting, I returned to my office and sat by the window as dusk settled in. The lights below blinked on across the city like code sinking to a heartbeat. I held the envelope again, the one Dagna left behind, and wondered what she had to sacrifice to step away so completely. Later that night, a plain envelope arrived at my home address. Inside, a photo, old and creased, of Dagna holding a baby in a hospital bed. On the back, in the same handwriting, power doesn't forgive, softness. But legacy, it remembers. I tucked it into the back of my desk, then turned off the light.